Ladies and gentlemen, we caught her. Cardi B got handled, she got humbled, and she got handed her own apology right back to her face with a bow on top. I cannot even believe what we are watching today. That is how wild this entire situation is, as we have just found out that Cardi B, the same woman who tried to play big sister, the same woman who tried to play peacemaker, the same woman who tried to wrap up an entire mess with a designer purse, well, she just got smoked by Latto on her own retirement album, and the whole internet is sitting here in stunned silence. We have all been put on notice together, and whether you are the biggest Cardi defender out there or her loudest hater, the message Latto just delivered through the speakers is the kind of message you cannot unhear. It is the kind of bar that does not fade with the week. It is the kind of moment that goes into the books, as what we have just witnessed is that with what Latto did on Big Mama and how she chose to close her entire rap career, well, Latto made sure that the last note in her chapter was a humiliation song aimed straight at Cardi B, and even Cardi B's own loudest supporters are stuck trying to figure out a way to clean this up. And now, if you are ready to get into every layer of this, before we go any further, make sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and hype this video up because we really need it. I will just say that what is obvious right now and what is happening right now, and when we look at how this Cardi situation fits into the bigger picture of women in rap in this era, it will all start to make a lot more sense once we slow it down. Because with this Cardi B situation and whoever is whispering in her ear telling her these public apologies and these viral peace offerings are still good public relations strategy, well, somebody on her team is asleep at the wheel, and the bots and the loyalists and the fan accounts cannot save her from what just landed on track 9. So really make sure to leave a like right now. We really do need it. It has never been more important for this channel and for the culture of women in rap, you could say. And so pay attention right here, because what I am about to walk you through and prove in multiple ways is going to end up becoming arguably, if not the most defining female rap moment of the entire year, but one of the cleanest, coldest, most surgical comeback verses we have heard in the modern era of this entire genre. Because here is what we have found out, and here is what is happening behind the curtain. While Cardi B has spent the last 8 months selling the story that everything between her and Latto was patched up, that the apology was real, that the bag was on the way, and that the two of them were back in good standing, well, what if I told you Latto never accepted any of it? What if I told you Latto sat there for 8 months, in complete silence, carrying a baby, building an album, lining up features, and quietly sharpening one verse that would land like a hammer the moment her project went live? What if I told you the whole peace offering Cardi tried to push out, the whole bag, the whole apology, the whole sweet little public moment Cardi staged on her timeline? Well, what if I told you Latto walked into the booth and shredded it line by line on her own farewell record? Because seriously, everything we are seeing and everything we have just lived through is the kind of comeback that does not happen by accident. This was not a stray bar. This was not a freestyle. This was a planned, dated, scheduled, surgically executed response that Latto kept in her chamber until the exact right moment, which happened to be the same week she was retiring from rap, the same week she was announcing her baby girl, the same week she was walking off the field as a champion on her own terms. To rewind the tape, because I know some of you might be coming in fresh and some of you might have missed how this whole thing started, let me set the scene. The day to remember is September 30th, 2025. That is the day audio leaked of Cardi B in what sounded like a heated three-way phone call with industry voices, and in that audio, you can hear Cardi referring to Latto in a way that she absolutely should not have. Cardi was venting. Cardi was running her mouth. Cardi was clearly emotional. And the words that came out of her mouth implied that Latto was somehow soft, somehow scared, somehow lacking, and the words she chose to throw around carried weight, as it suggested Latto was the kind of woman who would not stand on what she said when the cameras turned off. To make it even messier, the trigger for the whole rant was not even Latto. The trigger, by every account that surfaced, was an entirely different situation involving Ice Spice, a situation Latto had nothing to do with, a situation she did not start, did not stir, and did not even comment on. Latto was a bystander. Latto caught the splash damage. Latto got pulled into a fire she did not light, and when that audio circulated across X, Instagram, and every blog with a pulse, the world heard her name used in a tone that no real friend of hers would ever use. Now, Academics denied leaking the audio, and Academics went on a whole rant of his own explaining that he was not the source, that he was not the snake, and that the clip did not come from his end. Cardi B then fired back at Academics publicly, demanding that he release the full 11-minute version of the conversation, claiming that the leak was edited, claiming that the leak was sliced down to make her look bad, and claiming that Ice Spice was the one who was actually upset because Cardi had publicly congratulated Sexy Red on a BET award. Ice Spice, of course, dropped a laughing emoji and slid in her own little jab through a teaser of a new song called Pretty Privilege, in which she taunted Cardi with a line about people who talk loud online but go silent in person. None of that, and I want to be very clear about this point, none of that beef, that audio drama, that mess, had anything to do with Latto. Latto was a name dragged through someone else's argument. Latto was the collateral damage in a war she did not enlist for. Latto, in that entire moment, was simply a feature on Cardi's bonus track who suddenly woke up to a phone call where her name was being chewed up by the same woman who had just put her on an album 1 week earlier. And this is where Cardi tried to do damage control, because within hours of that audio going viral on that exact same September 30th, Cardi B walked over to X and posted what she framed as a heartfelt public apology. She typed out a statement saying that she was ranting in the heat of the moment, that she was emotional, that she did not mean it the way it sounded, and that she respected Latto deeply, including her team. And then, in the closing line, she dropped the move that became the lightning rod, the move that turned this story from a quick blow-up into a long-term cultural conversation. Cardi B announced, out loud, in public, on her timeline, that she was going to buy Latto a bag. A designer bag. A Hermes, a Chanel, or some other high-end statement piece. And in hip-hop culture, where a luxury bag is not just a gift but a public symbol of standing, status, and balance, that move carries weight far beyond the price tag. Cardi framed it as generosity. Cardi framed it as humility. Cardi framed it as the kind of move only a real one would make. The internet, on the other hand, framed it as something completely different. Because here is where things get interesting. The apology landed reasonably well at first. People accepted that everyone gets emotional. People accepted that no one is perfect on a phone call. People accepted that a public apology is a hard thing for any artist to do, let alone an artist as big as Cardi B. But the moment the bag offer entered the equation, the conversation flipped. People started asking why a peace offering for hurting someone's name needed to be announced in front of millions of strangers. People started asking why a private gesture was being broadcast as if it were a press release. People started asking whether the bag was about Latto at all, or whether the bag was a piece of Cardi's own image rehab, a way to reposition herself as the bigger person, the generous one, the one who could be the adult in the room. And the loudest voices started saying what a lot of people were quietly thinking, which is that Cardi seemed to genuinely view Latto as the lesser figure in the conversation, the one who could be soothed with a luxury item, the one who would be flattered by a public showing of generosity from a bigger star. That perception, fair or unfair, accurate or inaccurate, became the air this story breathed for the next 8 months. And Latto, while all of this was unfolding, stayed completely silent. Not a tweet. Not a story. Not a sub. Not a wink. Not a hint. Latto did not log on. Latto did not subtweet. Latto did not call into a radio show. Latto did not sit down for an interview. Latto did not even drop a laughing emoji. Latto sat in the quietest, calmest, most disciplined silence we have seen from a rapper in the middle of a public storm in a very long time. And that silence, in hindsight, was not weakness. That silence was the loudest move in the entire chess match. Because while everybody was watching to see if Latto would crack, would tweet, would respond, would hop on a podcast, Latto was somewhere else entirely. Latto was pregnant. Latto was preparing to retire from rap. Latto was building a 17-track farewell album titled Big Mama, an album she would name after the new chapter of her life as a mother. And Latto was hiding, deep in the track list, on track 9, a verse that was being sharpened for one specific target. And this is the part where the curtain gets pulled back, because what we know now, with the album out and the verse public, is that Cardi B's bag offer never reached the ground. Cardi B's bag offer never closed the loop. Cardi B's bag offer was, by every visible indication, never accepted as the peace gesture it was advertised as. Because when Big Mama dropped on May 29, 2026, and when the world hit play on a 17-track project stacked with features from Glorilla, 21 Savage, Doeki I, Sexy Red, Mariah the Scientist, Teyana Taylor, Wizkid, and Jelly Roll, the most heavily decorated tracklist of Latto's entire career, fans went straight to the lyrics. And when they reached track 9, the title card alone told them what kind of moment they were about to walk into. And once that beat dropped, And once Latto's voice slid into the verse, the entire internet realized at the same time that Latto had been holding this in her chamber for 8 whole months. Let me walk you through the bars slowly, because every single line is doing very specific work, and the engineering inside this verse is what makes it more than a sub. It is a structural answer to a structural problem. Latto opens with a line about already having a Hermes store inside her closet, a line that does not just brag, but that directly responds, point by point, to the bag offer Cardi made publicly. Cardi offered a bag. Latto answers by stating that 21 Savage already handles that level of expense without prompting, without apology, without a public press release. Latto answers that no one needs to buy her a bag, because the closet was already stocked, the shelves were already loaded, the receipts were already printed. The apology bag, in other words, was unnecessary. The peace offering was redundant. The gesture was small. And Latto did not just imply that. Latto put it on wax. Latto pressed it to a record. Latto baked it into the most decorated album of her career, on the same project where she announced her retirement and her motherhood. That is not a sub. That is a closing statement. Then there is the second piece of engineering inside that verse, which is the producer name drop. Latto, in the same bars, dares Cardi to step into the booth and let the music settle it, and she even drops the name of a specific producer, Plaque Boy Max, a producer publicly associated with Cardi B's own creative orbit. According to TMZ, Cardi had shouted out that exact producer during the Super Bowl 60 flag football game in early 2026, tying him directly to her world. So when Latto name drops his name inside her diss verse, she is not just challenging Cardi to a booth battle, she is challenging Cardi using Cardi's own producer, on Cardi's own home turf, on Cardi's own roster of collaborators. That is not a regular shot. That is a chess move. Latto did not just answer the apology, Latto answered it using the very same network that Cardi B operates inside of, which makes the answer impossible to dodge, impossible to dilute, and impossible to spin into a misunderstanding. And now, when you stack these bars on top of each other, when you look at the closet line and the producer line back to back, what you are watching is a verse engineered to neutralize the entire 8-month-old narrative Cardi B set up in October of 2025. The apology was framed as generosity. Latto answered that with wealth. The apology was framed as a peace offering. Latto answered that with a booth challenge. The apology was framed as a closing chapter. Latto answered that with an opening shot fired from inside her own retirement album. Every single piece of Cardi's original public gesture got picked apart and turned into a punchline, and the entire architecture of that apology fell down line by line. That is what makes track 9 special, and that is what makes it more than just a diss. It is a public rewriting of who held leverage in the conversation, and once the album dropped, that rewriting became the version of the story the internet now believes. Now, let me slow down for a second, because there is something else underneath all of this that I want to flag. Cardi B, in that original apology tweet, used a phrase that suggested she really respected Latto. Cardi B, in the audio that leaked, used language that suggested the opposite. And in hip-hop, when those two versions of an opinion exist about the same person inside the same week, the public will always trust the unfiltered audio over the polished tweet. The audio is the receipt. The tweet is the cleanup. And once that audio existed in the world, the apology was always going to be measured against it. Latto knew that. Latto's silence for 8 months was not just patience, it was bookkeeping. Latto kept that audio in her back pocket the whole time, and when she dropped track 9, she was not responding to the apology, she was responding to the audio underneath the apology. Which is a level of strategic, long-form rap engagement that we do not often see from artists in this generation. And here is where things get even messier, because Latto's silence during those 8 months was not actually pure silence. There were moments along the way where fans tried to read between the lines. There was a stage performance where Latto repeated a certain word over and over again, and the internet immediately assumed it was a sub at Cardi. Latto then came online and clarified that it was not aimed at Cardi at that time. But now, in retrospect, with track 9 sitting on the track list of Big Mama, fans are looking back at every clip, every interview, every Instagram caption, every red carpet quote, and rereading them in a new light. Because if Latto was already cooking this verse in October, and if Latto was already preparing this closing chapter in November, December, January, and through the early months of 2026, then the calm, smiling, friendly version of Latto we were watching all year was the public face of a private war that the rest of us were not invited to see. That is composure. That is patience. That is what real long game energy looks like in rap, and there are not many artists who can sit on a verse like that for 8 straight months without leaking even a whisper of it. You also have to factor in the timing of everything else happening around Latto during that exact same window. Latto was pregnant. Latto was carrying a baby girl with 21 Savage. Latto was preparing one of the biggest life transitions any artist can go through, the move from full-time rapper to full-time mother, and she was doing all of that under public scrutiny. The album cover for Big Mama is itself a statement, Latto holding a baby cheetah, a direct callback to the cheetah print she has built her entire visual identity on for years. Latto did not just retire from rap, Latto closed her career with a piece of art that visually summarized her entire run. And she made sure that buried inside that artistic statement, on a single track at position 9 in the track list, there would be a verse that left no doubt about where she actually stood with Cardi B. That is layered. That is intentional. That is the kind of long-form thinking that defines artists who understand that rap is not just a song, it is a story, and every story has a final chapter. Now, in fairness, let me bring up the counter-argument, because the counter-argument is out there and some of you in the comments are going to bring it up, so let me bring it up first. The pushback I have heard online goes like this. If Latto was so hurt by what Cardi said in that audio, then why did Latto continue to engage with people who Cardi was beefing with? Specifically, Latto dropped a song called G with Glorilla on April 24th of this year, and Latto has continued to operate inside the same broader female rap ecosystem that Cardi exists in. Some people have asked, in that case, was Cardi really wrong to call Latto soft? Other people have asked why Latto did not respond when the audio first dropped, the way artists in older generations would have. And then there is the deeper question of whether Latto, by waiting 8 months, was strategic or whether she was simply scared to confront the moment in real time. These are fair questions, and I want to address them honestly. The answer, in my opinion, is that artists who plan their responses tend to win more battles than artists who react in real time. Real-time reactions are emotional. Planned responses are surgical. Latto chose surgical. And the result speaks for itself, because the bars from track 9 are now living rent-free in every rap blog, every comment section, every group chat that follows this culture seriously. There is also a parallel story playing out alongside all of this that you have to keep in mind, and that is the story of Cardi B's own album rollout. Cardi B released Am I the Drama and made history, becoming the first female rapper to ever debut both of her studio albums at the top of the Billboard 200 with massive streaming numbers, with 200,000 units in the first week and 145 million on-demand streams in the same window. That is a statistical achievement that, by every measurable standard, cements her at the top of women's rap in this era. And yet, none of those numbers, none of that history, stopped the chaos surrounding her behind the scenes. Because the leaked phone call still happened. The public apology still happened. The bag offer still happened. The silence from Latto still happened. And 8 months later, the response on track 9 still happened. Numbers can win a chart week. Numbers cannot win a culture war. And what Latto did on Big Mama is a culture war move, not a numbers move. And here is where the parallel storyline of Cardi's personal life gets dragged into the equation, because while all of this rap drama was unfolding, Cardi B was also dealing with the very public breakdown of her relationship, with conversations online about her ex, about her dating life, about her image, about her movements, about every party she walked into and every outfit she chose to wear. Cardi was getting dragged on social media for showing up to after parties and revealing outfits. Cardi was getting blamed in some corners of the internet for her ex's reported infidelity. Cardi was being painted by some commentators as someone going through a downward spiral after a breakup. Some defenders pushed back and said she was a single woman who could move however she wanted to move, but other voices argued that her public conduct was making her look unserious during a chapter that needed her to look composed. And whether you agree with any of that or not, the optics are what they are, and the optics around Cardi during this exact window were not the optics of an artist standing on solid ground. So when Latto's track 9 landed on top of all of that noise, it landed at a moment where Cardi's public image was already in a fragile place. The timing, intentional or not, could not have been crueler. And now let me bring up another piece of context that I think a lot of people are overlooking, because there is a deeper irony sitting underneath this whole feature situation. The same Latto who was so hurt that Cardi called her by that word in private, well, that same Latto continued to collaborate with artists who had also been on the wrong side of Cardi at various points. Latto worked with Ice Spice. Latto worked with Glorilla. Latto worked with artists Cardi has clashed with in different ways. And to a lot of fans online, that inconsistency is a fair criticism. Why be so wounded by Cardi's language privately but still play nice with Ice Spice publicly? Why be so emotionally cut by one word but still smile and pose with the same people Cardi was beefing with? It is a question that does not have a clean answer, and I am not going to pretend it does. Some people will say it is professionalism. Some people will say it is hypocrisy. Some people will say it is just business. What I will say is that the inconsistency does not erase the substance of the verse on track 9. The verse stands on its own as a piece of writing, as a piece of strategy, as a piece of public response, and whether or not the rest of Latto's behavior was perfectly consistent during the 8-month wait, the verse itself does the job it was written to do. You also have to talk about the features on Big Mama, because the features themselves carry a coded layer of messaging that the casual listener might miss. The fact that 21 Savage is on the album, the father of Latto's child, is obvious. The fact that Glorilla is on the album, after her own back and forth with the broader female rap ecosystem, is meaningful. The fact that Sexy Red is on the album, the same Sexy Red whose BET win became part of the original audio spark, is loaded. The fact that Jelly Roll is on the album, the fact that Wizkid is on the album, the fact that Teyana Taylor and Mariah the Scientist are on the album, every one of those features is a deliberate brick in a wall Latto is building around her own farewell. And some critics online have argued that certain feature choices on the project were questionable, especially given some artists' public histories, but Latto clearly decided that her closing chapter would be on her terms, with her people, with her sound, with her message, and she was not going to outsource that final decision to public opinion. That is the kind of choice you make when you know it is the last project. That is the kind of choice you make when you have already mentally moved on from the rap game and into motherhood. Now, let me bring it all the way back to the main event, because the main event here is still track 9, and the main event is still the way that one verse rewired an 8-month-old narrative. When the verse landed, the internet did not move slowly. Within minutes, the lyrics were being clipped, screenshotted, captioned, and circulated across X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube comments, and every group chat in the culture. People were dissecting the closet line. People were dissecting the producer name drop. People were dissecting the booth challenge. People were dissecting the cadence, the delivery, the calmness of Latto's voice when she said the bars, the way she did not raise her voice, the way she did not scream, the way she did not chase the energy of Cardi's original audio. Latto delivered the verse like a woman who had already won, which is the most damaging delivery you can possibly use against an opponent who is publicly known for her volume. Cardi is the loud one. Latto came in cold. And cold beats loud almost every single time on wax. And Cardi B's response to all of this, as of right now, has been silence. Cardi has not publicly addressed track 9. Cardi has not addressed Big Mama. Cardi has not addressed the producer name drop. Cardi has not addressed the closet line. Cardi has not addressed any of it. And in the same way that Latto's 8-month silence read as strategy, Cardi's current silence reads as something else entirely. Because when you are the louder personality, when you are the one who built your brand on quick reactions, when you are the one who started the original argument in a leaked audio, silence reads like a flag. Silence reads like a concession. Silence reads like an admission that there is no clean response available. And the longer that silence goes on, the louder Latto's verse gets, because Latto is the one whose words are now defining the conversation. Cardi can post anything she wants tomorrow, but track 9 already lives on streaming services, on radio, in TikTok edits, in lyric videos, and most importantly, on the official track list of Latto's retirement album. Which means it cannot be deleted, walked back, or quietly buried. Now let me also flag the historical weight of this moment, because this is not just a story about two female rappers having a back and forth. This is a story about how the modern rap response is delivered. In older eras, a diss landed quickly. The audio leaks, the response drops within hours, sometimes within minutes. In the streaming era, the playbook has changed. Now, the best responses are slow-cooked, embedded inside full projects, timed to album rollouts, and engineered to land alongside major life announcements that amplify the emotional weight of the message. Latto announcing her retirement and her motherhood in the same window as track 9 is not coincidence, it is choreography. It is a complete artistic package, and that package is far more durable than any tweet or any Instagram caption could ever be. When future archives of women in rap are written, the leaked audio will be a footnote. The apology tweet will be a footnote. The bag offer will be a footnote. But the verse on track 9, dropped on the closing album of one of the most consistent female rappers of her generation, will be a chapter heading. That is the difference between reacting and architecting. It also says something about Latto's growth as an artist. The Latto from her early mixtape days would not have written this verse. The Latto from her Y2K era, when the original B-Belt track was speculated to have been a subliminal at Cardi, would not have had the patience to wait 8 months for a response window. This is a more mature, more confident, more strategically minded Latto, and she chose to leave the game on a note that puts her in a different tier of public respect than she was in even a year ago. Whether you love her or whether you don't, you cannot deny that the way she handled this entire 8-month window was professional, controlled, and ultimately effective. That is the part of the story that gets lost when people argue about whether the bars were technically that hard. The bars are not the only thing that matters. The placement of the bars, the timing of the bars, the context of the bars, and the way the bars stack against the public history of the apology, that is what makes this moment what it is. A regular diss would have been forgotten by the next news cycle. This one is going to be quoted for years. And it is also worth noting how the audience reacted, because the audience reaction is its own data point. The split in the comments has been fascinating to watch. On one side, you have people saying that Latto cooked, that the verse is a clean answer, that the closet line and the producer name drop are clinical, and that Cardi has no clean way to come back from this without making it worse. On the other side, you have people defending Cardi, saying that the original apology was sincere, that the bag offer was generous, that Latto is being petty for not letting it go, that bringing it back up 8 months later on a retirement album is itself a sign that Latto was sitting in the hurt for too long. And then there is a third group, the most interesting group, the people who are sitting back and acknowledging that both things can be true at once. The apology can be sincere and the response can still be valid. The bag offer can be generous and the response can still be earned. The original audio can be a heat-of-the-moment slip and the response can still be a public correction. Real culture analysis lives in those three-sided conversations, not in the either-or noise that dominates most of the timeline. And so when we widen the lens and look at this entire situation as a finished arc, what we are seeing is that Latto walked into 2026 with the most carefully designed exit any female rapper has executed in recent memory. She announced her retirement. She announced her baby. She dropped a 17-track album packed with high-profile features. She buried the most important verse of the entire project on track 9. She named the album after the new identity she is stepping into. She held her silence for 8 months, refusing to give Cardi the public response Cardi was waiting for. And then, on her own timeline, on her own terms, on her own record, she dropped one verse that demolished the bag offer, challenged Cardi to a booth confrontation, name-dropped Cardi's own producer, and flexed a Hermes closet that made the entire apology gesture from October look like a small idea against the bigger picture of Latto's career. That is not a clapback. That is a closing argument from a defense attorney who has been preparing for trial since the day the audio leaked. And it is also why this story is going to live beyond this news cycle. Because in rap, the situations that get remembered are not the loud ones, they are the ones with structure. And track 9 has structure. It is engineered, it is timed, it is layered with personal life context, it is delivered on the most important project of the artist's career, and it is unanswered. As long as it remains unanswered, it grows. As long as it remains unanswered, it becomes the version of the story that the culture treats as canon. Cardi B can break that pattern at any time by stepping into the booth herself, by responding on a track, by accepting the booth challenge Latto laid down. But the longer she waits, the harder that response becomes, because every day that passes makes the original apology look more like a missed opportunity and Latto's verse look more like a finishing move. Now let me also bring something to your attention that has been quietly building underneath all of this, because Cardi B's personal life moments after the album dropped continued to draw their own kind of attention. There were photographs of her at an after-party in an outfit that drew widespread commentary online. There were online voices using that imagery to argue that this was the same pattern of behavior her ex-partner had been frustrated by. There were defenders pushing back, saying she was a single woman with the right to celebrate freely, and there were critics framing her recent appearances as part of a broader narrative about her conduct since her breakup. And whether any of that is fair or not, the cumulative effect has been a public image that is being pulled in multiple directions at once. Latto's verse landed inside that swirl, and as a result, the verse has not just been heard as a rap line, it has been heard as part of a larger conversation about how Cardi B is moving through this chapter of her career and her life. That intersection of personal narrative and musical narrative is what makes the response so sticky, and it is what keeps the conversation alive on every platform days after the album dropped. Let me say something I think a lot of you in the comments are going to agree with. Female rap has been waiting for a moment like this for years. We have had so much fake unity, so many performative collabs, so many staged reconciliations, so many photo ops between rivals where everyone smiles for the camera while privately rolling their eyes. What Latto did on track 9 is the opposite of all that. It is honest. It is direct. It is musical. It is artistic. It does not require a podcast appearance, it does not require an Instagram live, it does not require a leaked DM screenshot. It is contained inside one verse on one song on one album, and it speaks for itself. That is the kind of move that lifts the bar for everyone else in the genre. When you raise the standard for what a response looks like, you force everyone else to either match it or admit they cannot. And whether or not Cardi B chooses to respond, Latto has already done the harder work, which is making this verse the standard against which any future response will be judged. There is also a deeper, almost cinematic quality to the way Latto orchestrated this entire chapter. The pregnancy announcement, the retirement announcement, the album cover with the baby cheetah, the 17-track sprawl, the heavyweight feature list, the placement of the diss on track 9, the silence that preceded it, the calm tone in which the bars were delivered, all of it reads like a film with a clear 3-act structure. Act 1 was the leaked audio and the apology in October of 2025. Act 2 was the silent 8 months. Act 3 is Big Mama, the retirement, the motherhood, and the verse. And the closing shot of that film is Latto walking off the stage of rap entirely, baby in arms, album behind her, and one verse on the record that ensured nobody will forget the way she chose to leave. That kind of narrative discipline is rare. That kind of long-form thinking is rare. And that kind of execution does not happen by accident in this industry. Someone in Latto's camp, whether it is her team, her producers, or her label strategists, understood exactly what kind of moment they were building, and they built it with surgical precision. So now, let me bring this entire thing home. The story arc of this whole 8-month chapter teaches us a few very real lessons about modern rap culture. The first lesson is that public apologies have to be delivered carefully, because in the streaming era, they can be quoted back to you 8 months later as the launching pad for a counter-narrative. The second lesson is that silence, when used correctly, is louder than any response. The third lesson is that the artists who control their own timelines are the artists who win the long battles. And the fourth lesson is that retirement records are some of the most powerful weapons in this genre, because they are the last documents an artist leaves behind, which means whatever lives inside them gets etched into the artist's permanent legacy. Latto understood all 4 of those lessons, and she executed all 4 of them in a single move on a single track. That is rare. That is masterful. And that is going to be studied by younger female rappers for years to come, the same way older female rappers studied the moves of the legends who came before them. And here is one more piece of this puzzle that I really want you to sit with before we close this out, because it is the piece that elevates this entire situation from a regular rap exchange to something culturally bigger. When you study the history of women in hip-hop, you start to notice that the genre has rarely allowed 2 female stars at the very top to coexist without forcing one of them to bend, break, or quietly fade out. The industry has historically pitted them against each other, manufactured beefs to sell magazines and streams, and then disposed of whichever one lost the public relations war that month. Latto, by waiting 8 months and answering inside her own retirement album, is doing something different. She is refusing to play the disposable role. She is refusing to be the punchline of someone else's narrative. She is refusing to let the version of her name that lived inside that leaked audio be the version that ends up in the history books. And she is doing all of it without screaming, without spiraling, without dragging the conversation onto every podcast circuit she could squeeze a booking out of. That is a quiet revolution against an old, exhausted playbook, and whether or not you personally side with Latto on this, you have to respect the discipline behind the maneuver, because it is the kind of discipline this genre has been begging its women to show for 2 decades. So now, with all of that on the table, I want to hear from you. What is your read on this entire situation? Do you think Cardi B is going to respond to track 9? Do you think she is going to step into the booth and accept Latto's challenge? Do you think she is going to let it ride and hope the news cycle moves on? Do you think Latto won the 8-month war, or do you think the inconsistencies in her behavior during the gap weakened the moral weight of her verse? Do you think the bag offer was sincere, or do you think it was a public relations move dressed up as generosity? Do you think this whole thing is going to be remembered as a defining chapter in modern female rap, or do you think it will fade with the next news cycle? Drop your honest, unfiltered, fully unbothered takes in the comments. I want to read every single one of them, and I want to know which side of this story your culture instincts are landing on. And if you made it to this point in the video, thank you for sticking through every layer of this story, because I really appreciate it. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hype this video up. It helps the channel out more than you know, and it makes a real, measurable difference in whether videos like this one continue to get pushed out to the wider audience that actually engages this culture deeply. And if you want to see how, before this moment, the whole female rap ecosystem was already in a state of tension that set the table for track 9, well, you are going to want to watch the suggested video next, because everything you just learned is going to make a whole lot more sense once you see what came before it.